In 2023, Australians lost $2.74 billion being scammed, which is an outrageous amount of money. And someone who knows all about this is Tracy Hall. She was scammed by one of the world's most prolific con men. Tracy, thank you for joining me in the South by Southwest Sydney studio.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Lovely to have you here. This is an amazing story, and sadly, it's a common story. Can you tell me how you were scammed? What exactly happened?
I met a man online in 2016 by the name of Max Tavita, and we entered into a long-term, very intimate relationship, very in real life relationship. And about a year and a half after we met, I woke up to a Crime Stoppers video one morning of him being arrested outside of his Bondi Beach apartment for swindling 15 victims out of $7.6 million.
Wow. What was that feeling? What was that initial feeling? I imagine gut falling.
Yeah, 100%. To be honest, I was in shock and just like disbelief, denial. And the headlines that were sort of starting to go on the internet were things like Bondi businessman, 47, superannuation fraud. And in my head, I thought they've got it wrong because Max is only 42. You know, this is where my head was going.
Course.
I had no idea. I didn't know his real name when he was arrested.
Incredible. And as I said, it's such a common story these days. Maybe not necessarily the fraud, but some kind of deception online, be it the person's name, age, job, whether it's their photo that they're using to promote themselves anywhere. It's a really common story. And could you share then some of like the warnings or red flags that you may have noticed but you overlooked when it came to Hamish?
Yeah, I think, there's no red flags when you're wearing rose-coloured glasses. They're just flags, really. Yep. But in retrospect, I think there are a lot of things that could be seen as warning signs. I didn't really meet very many of his friends or family. It was always a future promise to me. Yes, we'll do that next weekend. Yeah. So I couldn't really validate who he was. I did meet some people, but it never came out that his name wasn't Max, for example. He didn't have a digital footprint. So I think it's one thing not to have a social footprint. Yeah. A lot of people don't have social media profiles and that's totally fine. But it's another thing in this day and age, I think, not to have a digital footprint. So that was a massive red flag. And of course, he had reasons for all of these things. Some of his stories were very big. Yeah. And at the time, I just kind of laughed them off and thought, I didn't know if he's joking or not some of the time. But, other than that, there really was just a very trusting and respectful relationship. So I didn't suspect. And I think that's the hard thing when you don't suspect someone is deceiving you. Yes. You don't go looking for those red flags.
No. And I guess it's human nature to want to see the best and believe people. And how did that feel? I mean, we all go through stages of grieving of something, the shock, the anger phase. Was that triggered a lot by the deceit more than anything? Was the fact that he chose to lie to you?
Yeah, I think the money was one thing. I guess I was betrayed on both levels. Yeah. So on an emotional level and then also a financial level. I lost $317,000. I lost my life savings to him. He tricked me, basically. He guided and groomed me into setting up a self-managed super fund. So I lost my career, superannuation, and some other parts of money. But yes, the emotional betrayal felt worse because I do believe you can always make money if you work hard, you've got the right attitude, that sort of thing. You can always make money. But to come back to a world where you have to start trusting again, I think that's been harder for me to come back from.
And what advice then, having gone through this experience, would you give to others who might be in a similar situation or have suspicions that they are?
I would say talk about what's happening between you and your partner, especially if it's to do with money. I think money is still one of those taboos, unfortunately, and there wasn't really anyone I was talking to about what I was doing. So this silent secrecy around money actually allows scammers to thrive because they count on the fact that you're not going to tell anyone what you're doing and they can fool you and deceive you. So I would say talk to people about it because often your loved ones or people standing beside you can see things that you can't, because they're not wearing the rose-coloured glasses. They aren't wrapped up in the endorphins of love. So I would say, talk to the people around you and get the advice of people who are very close to you.
Absolutely. And what's one key takeaway from your session, which is called the $2.7 billion industry we need to be talking about? What do you hope they leave with after that session?
I want people to understand that this can happen to anyone. I never thought it would be me. I think we see those stories on the news and in popular culture, and we immediately have a picture of the person that gets scammed. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's a lonely middle-aged woman sitting in her lounge room looking for love on the internet, surrounded by her cats, and suddenly she's transferred her life savings to her African prince. And you're like, how? That's never going to be me. And yet here I am. I lost my life savings to a man I met on the internet who pretended to love me.
Incredible.
So I want everyone to understand the tips, like the tactics, the behaviours that scammers use to have you basically abandon your logical thinking, because you can't understand how they can do it until you know.
And can I ask, some of those tactics that they do use, would I be right in suspecting love bombing?
Yes.
Was there?
Yeah, 100%. They basically attempt to get you into a heightened emotional state by eliciting things like fear, love, hope, excitement. And when you're in that heightened emotional state, you actually have less access to your logical thinking. And then you couple that with some situational vulnerability. And that could be anything from being distracted, being busy, being an executive that travels international time zones. It could be you've just had a baby. Any number of things can make you situationally vulnerable. And those two things coupled together, emotions and vulnerability, and it's the perfect petri dish for scammers to thrive. So they're the things to be aware of, not, validate the details and things like that. Be aware of your own emotions and where you're at.
That's very good advice. Very good advice. And what role do you think that South by Southwest plays in shaping the future of dealing with scammers and cybersecurity?
Well, I think there's a lot going on in this space that really falls very neatly into the technology conversation. There are scammer compounds in Southeast Asia and other places, but Southeast Asia, where there are thousands of employees who have been often lured there under false employment pretense. They're often victims of human trafficking themselves, and they find themselves imprisoned in these scammer compounds. And they're tortured if they don't meet their scammer quotas, their KPIs. And what these scammer compounds have access to is technology, resource, playbooks. And it has been said that there is AI technology coming out of these scammer compounds that is more than 2 years ahead of any government agency in the world. There is voice cloning, there is face cloning, there is so much sophistication. They're run by criminal syndicates. And quite frankly, the world is not keeping up. And I think this is where the technology conversation comes into cybersecurity, data, etc. But, they are streams and streams ahead of us. So I think it's important for us to keep our focus on that too.
That's right. And keeping up to date with the technology so that you know what you can fight against if need be.
Yeah, or even be aware that if you get a phone call from your child that sounds like your child, it may not in fact actually be your child.
I find that very scary, very scary indeed. And how do you think that South by Southwest can change the trajectory of someone's career or business?
Oh, I think the exposure to the ideas, I think anything that opens your world up to bigger ideas, things you haven't heard of before, people you've never met. I think, just opening your world up is got to be a positive thing for anyone really. But it's also exciting. It's bringing an energy to the conversations, and it's such a broad range of content that's been presented. So it's a choose your own adventure in the best possible way.
It sure is. And speaking of, who are you looking forward to seeing speak?
Oh, well, if I'm really honest, I actually am not going to get to see anybody. I'm off to Singapore.
No, you've got important work to do.
I do.
You are spreading awareness.
I'm off to a scams conference in Singapore.
Oh wow, that'll be interesting.
So unfortunately for me, I'm not getting to see anyone, but I'm happy to be here and I'm so thrilled to be involved.
Well, thank you so much for your time here in the South by Southwest Sydney studio, Tracy. Now, before you go, you do have a book that has come out. If we can just show everyone there, it's called The Last Victim by Tracy Hall. Make sure that you get a copy. A great reference, I'm sure, for all of the things we've discussed today.
Thank you for having me.
And you can watch more videos at youtube.com/South by Southwest Sydney.